Hello, Squatchers. Stubbs here. Welcome to this week's video. This week, we are going to go over planning a hike. Now, I'm kind of going to be focused on someone planning their very first hike or someone that doesn't really know how to plan a hike, so they're just kind of getting their feet wet in it. So some of the suggestions that I'm going to make aren't really made for the experienced hiker. However, this video will have everything that any hiker needs when they go to plan a hike. So go ahead, turn on those apps on your phone, start looking at some maps and start thinking of some ideas, and let's dive into how to plan your very first hike. So the first thing you need to do while planning your trip is pick a trail. What kind of trail do you want to go on? I would highly suggest, while picking a trail, that you pick something that is in an area that you know. You don't want to be going out to some place that you've never even really heard before. You just picked a random spot on the map. You don't know where it is. None of your friends knows where it is. And it's just some random spot because you're asking for a lot of unnecessary dangers. So pick something close to you. Pick something that you know, or you at least know the area. And it's easy for you to be able to explain to others where it is. And it's easy for you to have a good idea of where you are. Being that this is your first hike, I would suggest you keep it to a short distance and you keep the level of the hike appropriate to your level or even below. You're not really looking to push yourself and do a really hard hike to push your body physically. This is more of a mental game. You're trying to properly do a planning process and execute your plan. So don't try to pick a hike that is really hard or something that you're like, oh, I know I've done a hike like this before. It was really tough, but I really think I can make it. Instead, focus on a hike that's shorter, easier on your abilities, and allows you to practice more of your planning skills rather than your physical hiking ability. So now that you know what area you want to hike, how do you find a trail? Well, in today's day and age, this is an easy question to answer. The internet. The internet is a great source to find your trail. Just put it into a search engine, put in the area that you want to hike in, and then just type in trails and all sorts of trails are going to come up. A lot of times you're actually going to be something called All Trails that pops up. And it's an All Trails website that you can download as an app on your phone. All Trails is really good to try to find a trail around the area that you're searching. All Trails has a rating system. They have a comment section. You can actually see a map and there'll be a coordinates to go to that destination. The downfall of All Trails is that All Trails has to have cell phone service in order to operate. So if you don't have cell phone service, you unfortunately don't have an operating map. That's where the app Far Out is really good. Far Out, you actually download the apps onto your phone and uses a GPS to maneuver you around the app itself. Unfortunately, with Far Out, they don't have all the trails. They only have whatever trails that the Far Out company has drafted into their app. Other good ways to find a trail is to use social media groups. Talk to hikers in your area, see what hikes they really like, and then from there, use the resources that you already have at your disposal to kind of balance everything together. And I would highly suggest trying to see if you have a map of the area, an actual physical map, and use as many of the resources compounded together in order to find the trail that you think is going to be best for you. Now that you know what trail you want to use for your hike, it's time to start doing good old-fashioned research. During your research, things that you're going to want to be paying attention to are things like parking. Is it easily accessible for parking? Does parking end up adding another, half a mile to a mile on your trail? Is parking something you have to pay for? Sometimes they have little things that set aside for you to help pay for the area that they take care of so you can park there. So those are just good things to know ahead of hand. Another thing that you might have to pay for is a permit. So you're going to need to know, is this an area that is permitted? And you'll need a day permit, an overnight permit, or whatever it is that you're planning on doing for your exact hike. Getting into the trail itself, you're going to want to research the actual route. You're going to want to know, how does the trail run? You know, it's that way you have a picture in your mind of where you're going to be maneuvering on the trail. So if you happen to get turned around or whatever, you've at least done a base layer of research to be able to understand where you are or where you need to get to. With this, it's important to understand landmarks that are around the trail. Is the trail part of a mountain? Are there mountains next to you? Is there a river? Is there a lake, a pond? This way, as you're moving around the trail, if you do happen to get turned around, get off the trail, or get lost, you can use these landmarks to orientate yourself back to where you need to be. With the research that you do on the actual route, that's something that you want to bring with you out on the trail. Whether it is a solid map, or it is the app on your phone or your GPS that you're using, you want to be able to have something to reference while you're out there on the trail. And I highly suggest having multiple ways, having a map and having an app on your phone and having a GPS unit. That way you have things to go back to. The map is the most solid base that you will have, for it does not need power. It is what it is. It's a solid object. You can look at it, you can read it, and as long as you have the basic understanding of how that map works, you'll be able to understand where you are and get yourself properly orientated. The advantage to having the GPS system is the GPS system can actually show you exactly where you are without you having to look at the landmarks and try to figure it out. It'll show you right on the unit. But that is not always something that's reliable because it needs power, where a map does not. So it's always good to have both those things with you while you're going on the hike itself. While you are researching the route, researching the terrain, one thing you want to pay attention to is water. The reason why water is important is twofold. One is so that you have water to drink out there on the trail. You know, is there water sources within reasonable stents that you can get to filter your own water? Or is water something you're going to have to pack out? That's very important information to have. Number two is there any water dangers along the way? Is there a stream crossing, river crossing? Is there, a lake in the way, a pond, whatever? How are you going to deal with that? Are you going around it? Are you going over it? So it's definitely something to ensure that you pay attention to during your planning process. Weather is absolutely something that you're going to want to research and make sure you know what kind of weather you're going to have while you're out there. Though you always want to plan for all kinds of weather, really you want to know, or at least be able to expect, what kind of weather you're going to have out there. How that changes your gear is more on, like, if you're going hiking out in the spring and it's going to be 70s the whole time, maybe bringing more of that winter weather gear isn't needed. However, you always want to make sure that you bring rain gear, because even if it says it's not going to rain, if you don't have rain gear, you're going to get wet. It's going to rain on you. Number two, you always want to make sure you have warming layers. Even if you're not layered up for 0 degrees, because it's not supposed to be snow flurries the whole time, you want to make sure you have proper protection, because that doesn't mean it's knocking you down in the 40s that night with a cold wind and you're going to feel like it's 0. The last part of your research that you're going to want to do is going to be just on the area itself. What kind of animals can you expect in the area, and how should you properly act around them? Are there any kind of plants that you shouldn't touch because they are poisonous? Are they endangered? Is there something you should leave alone? It's just good to really know the area that you're in and knowing how to react around everything within that environment. So now that you know what kind of environment you're going to be in, what kind of weather you're expecting, how much water that you're going to need to bring out with you, it's time to start gearing up and make sure that you have the appropriate gear. This gear will change depending on season, depending on terrain, and depending on the weather. So it's going to be important to research what that area is going to be and what the weather is going to be in that area so that you can make your gear appropriate to it. You're also going to want to make sure that you bring the appropriate amount of food and then some. You always want to bring out extra just in case something happens. You're not like, well, I didn't expect to have to stay here overnight, so I only brought enough food for some snacks out there. It doesn't take much more just to bring an extra day's worth of food, and it is highly, highly suggested. Water, like I mentioned before, is that something that you're going to need to bring a ton of water out with you because it's not very accessible on this trail that you have picked? Or is there water everywhere, so all you really need is just your proper filtration system? So now that you know where you're going, you've done your research on the trail, you know all about it, you know what gear you need, you got all your gear, you feel ready, you feel like you are prepared to go. Now it's time to share that knowledge with somebody else. Before you go out on the trail, it's important to educate at least 2 other people of where you're going and all the research that you have found. So that way, if for some reason you don't show back up or nobody hears from you, at least 2 different people know exactly where you were going and what dangers you thought you were going to run into. This will definitely help any search parties that are going out looking for you when they try to retrace your steps. The last part is going to be communication. It's very important to communicate with people while you're out on the trail. So as you go to leave, whoever those 2 people are, you send them a message. Leaving my house now. You get to the trailhead. I'm at the trailhead. I'm stepping onto the trail. As you're going through the trail, maybe give them an update. Yeah, things are going really good. I'm stopping for a lunch break. And when you get out of the trail, make sure to tell them, hey, I'm off the trail. I'm getting back in my vehicle and I'm heading home. This way, there's kind of a timeline of what's happening. They know that you at least made it to the trail, so they know where to start looking. If for some reason you know the area you're going into has bad service, try your best to duplicate this. So if you know, okay, by the time I hit this town, I will no longer have service and I won't have it to the trailhead, throughout the trail, and back until I hit that town again. Right before you cross that town, send that message. Hey, I just passed through such and such. I'm going to be losing service. I'll let you know when I get back in service. And when you get back into service, send them that message again. Let them know that you made it back. It's important to send that second message because you don't want people going looking for you when you're home, recovering, having a cold beer, and they're out there in the woods trying to find you. So always make sure to send your messages and communicate with people so they know how you're doing and the fact that you are safe. One of the most important parts of your hike actually comes in 2 sections. The first part is have fun. That's the biggest thing. That's why we're out there. We're out there to enjoy nature. We're out there to disconnect from all the noise and all the garbage. And we're out there just to have fun and enjoy nature. But in doing so comes part 2, which is be safe. And that's why these kind of planning processes and this way to approach a hike is set up the way that it is. Could you just drive down the road and look for a trailhead and walk down it and be fine? Sure, you could. But you're opening the door to a lot more dangers to happen. You're taking unnecessary risks. It doesn't take a lot of time to make this kind of planning and make this work. And it's definitely worth it. So, most important things, have fun and be safe. All right, so a recap on what we want to be doing while we're planning our first hike. The first thing we want to do is pick a trail. The second thing we want to do is do your research. The third thing you want to do is gear up. The fourth thing you want to do is educate others. And the fifth thing you want to do is to stay in communication with those that you've educated so that if anything happens, someone can find you. All right, Squatchers, so that is a quick tutorial on how to plan your very first hike. There's certain sections in that definitely need to be dived into further. especially when it gets to the research part and connecting your research to your gear. And maybe in future videos, I'll be able to do that. I really had a fun time making this. I love planning hikes. Unfortunately, it's like anything else. We're all so busy that I have so many hikes planned that I haven't even been able to go on yet, but those days are coming. Speaking of not being able to go on hikes, for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to try to keep the videos flowing. I'm going to try to keep them coming in on the regular basis. However, on Wednesday, I am going in for surgery on my ankle to try to improve that bone cutting into my tendon thing. Once I do that, I'll be stuck on bed rest. So a lot of the videos are going to look like this for a little while. I cannot wait to get back out on the trail. I cannot wait to get back out in the woods and start showing you guys actual footage of being out there and doing this stuff. But unfortunately, until I go through this surgery, that's something that I just cannot do. So I'm going to try to keep the videos flowing, but if there's a week or whatever one doesn't show up, it's because I'm in recovery. I highly apologize, but I'm going to try to get right back to them as fast as I can. I appreciate all your guys' support, and I always hope you learn something and you have fun. Thank you so much, Squatchers, and I will see you in the next video.